Welcome to this webinar series of Yashoda Hospital, Hyderabad. Myself, Dr. Sachin, I am surgical oncologist at Yashoda Hospital, Somajiguda. Along with me, my close friend and colleague, Dr. Harish. He's there, he's medical oncologist. So today we'll discuss about the stomach cancer. What are the etiology, what are the, why it comes, what are the risk factors, and how we treat in our hospital, what are the recent modalities of treatments are available, including few recent advances, and also how to deal with some complications or issues, and also follow up. So this is our webinar series which you normally we do to create awareness into the patients, into the community at a large, and also few our doctors who are interested to get more knowledge and what are the latest update about cancer. So let us start let us start with the uh, cancer series. So stomach cancer is one of the most common cancer in GI malignancy we see.
Sorry to interrupt. Share your screen.
Is it seen?
Yes, sir. Make it a full screen.
Yeah. So stomach cancer is one of the most common cancer as far as the gastrointestinal cancer concerned, especially in the South India. We have other cancers, but when we see South Indian states, normally we do see stomach cancer more. Recently, last week only, we have operated one patient who was a young guy, and he had stomach dyspepsia, fullness in stomach, and he came to us with the symptoms. We did the reports, and we confirmed that it is a stage 1 cancer, and he underwent surgery successfully and doing well. So let me tell you that around in 1 lakh, the incidence is around 8.1 to 9, and it is among 10% cancers worldwide, and around 10,000 cases die annually. And in India, most of the time the treatment is it is one of the common cancer in India, and treatment consists of surgery plus chemotherapy plus radiation, and sometimes it could be multimodality treatment. If we treat the patient successfully and in early stage, definitely the patients do well. So this is normally what are the causative agents, why it comes, or what are the risk factors for the cancer. So let me tell you that most common is multifocal atrophic gastritis. This is very important because in our population, a lot of patients, they just consume the antacids medicines like ranitidine or pantoprazole. These are very common names like Pandi and Pentop. And I have seen many patients who just consume for months together, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, they are taking antacids, but that causes atrophic gastritis, and that is one of the most common cause for stomach cancer. Second important is H. pylori infections. H. pylori is one of the bacteria which is present in our body, in our intestine, and it is in everywhere, in all populations it is present. But when it becomes more along with epigenetic factors, they may manifest as a stomach cancer, and there is a treatment available for H. pylori infection. We can irradiate H. pylori. And then other causative agents are high salt and high nitrate intake, like when we eat junk food, which are normally very, very high salt and deep fried items, and then nitrate intake, those food items which they keep for long shelves, like the preparation they do, but they sell it after 1 month, 2 months. So these preservatives which the food industry add into the food, that is also important cancer factor. Then along with that, all our lifestyle bad habits like smoking, alcohol, spicy food, and long preserved food, these are very, very important. Diet deficient in fresh vegetables and antioxidants, and sometimes Epstein-Barr virus infection and previous history of radiation. Along with that, if there is some family history like 2 generations, 3 members in the family are suffering, then probably the risk to next generation is high. Obesity, overweight people, These also are prone for cancer, intestinal metaplasia, previous gastric ulcers, and polyps, and these are other rare conditions which also causes cancer. So normally what happens is some normal infection which is there in the body, that is atrophic gastritis, it becomes the inner lining of the stomach, it changes, that is called as intestinal metaplasia, and then it causes dysplasia, like the pre-malignant condition, mild to moderate to severe, and then it becomes carcinoma. So it is like adenoma carcinoma sequence, and initially it will be just infection, but over the period of time it can become cancer. So how we what are the symptoms patient comes? Most of the time the symptoms are like acidity or heartburning or early fullness of stomach. If we eat small quantity, immediately the stomachs get full. Sometimes these patients presents with anemia because the bleeding ulcer inside causes loss of blood, and they can have a dark colored stool, melena, or vomiting. And sometimes abdominal distension, they present with ascites, jaundice. So these are all symptoms of gastric cancer. And how we diagnose? Suppose any patient comes to these above reports or above symptoms, then first we do endoscopy. So in endoscopy, we put one small tube inside the stomach and see the abnormal area. And such abnormal area, if there is anything, we take some biopsy, that is one sample from the biopsy, and we send it for diagnosis, and that confirms as a cancer. We also do CT scan or PET scan. So it will tell us the extent of the disease, whether it is restricted to the stomach here or it has spread to any other organ like liver or kidney or lung or peritoneum. So all those things we will come to know in the CT scan. And then first treatment option is best is surgery, but of course it depends on the stage 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 stages of cancer, and if the patient is early stage, that is stage 1 and stage 2, not spread to other organs, then we take this patient for surgery. We remove some part of the stomach along with the nodes, and then these we send it for further histopathology. If it is restricted to one area, patient may not need a further treatment. But if it is little advanced, and if there are any chances that the cancer, the recurrence of cancer, then obviously we discuss in our team and then we give further treatment. So these are the lymph node stations available in the stomach cancer, and we need to remove these all lymph nodes along with the major vessels. So there are different numbers and different stations, and accordingly they are called as D1, D2, D3 gastrectomy. So these are the figures which is showing different nodes, numbers, and the extent of the surgery. So as I told you, N1, N2, N3 or D1, D2, D3, these are lymph node stations, resection, and sometimes the further intraoperative management, what we do is these are the few intraoperative images just for your information. When we do the surgery, this is the part of the liver, this is the stomach cancer. We have removed the tumor from the stomach cancer, and we also remove the lymph nodes here along the great vessels, hepatic artery, celiac artery, and we clear all the microscopic disease which is present here. So such surgery can take around 3 to 4 hours, and then patient would be in the hospital for 4 to 5 days. Initially, we feed them through the tube, and then once patient is recovered completely, again we will start from the oral tube. So that this is all as far as the stomach cancer surgery is concerned. And next treatment plan, or what happens next, that we discuss with the pathology, and we have a tumor board meeting. We discuss with our medical colleague, radiation colleague, and then also we involve the patient and the relatives. We explain them that this is the stage of the disease and this is the pathology report. If patient needs any further treatment, then we as a team we take a decision, and next further chemotherapy or radiation or targeted therapy, what option best suit for that particular patient, we will treat them accordingly. So this is as far as the incidence is concerned. I mean, what is the rate of cancer in the Indian population, what are the risk factors, and the what are the causative agents to come for stomach cancer, and then what investigations we do like CT scan, endoscopy, biopsy, and PET scan. And then as far as the surgery is concerned, I have given you some intraoperative snaps that how we remove and how we do it. So after this, my colleague Dr. Harish, who will take further discussion about the further treatment of stomach cancer.
Thank you so much, sir. Pawan, can I see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Make it a full screen from current slide on the top.
Yeah, just take it to the top. Okay.
Yes, sir. Start from the first slide.
Yeah, just like. Thank you so much, sir, for the extensive presentation. Because the stomach cancer being the most common cause of leading mortality worldwide in India, here I'm going to discuss briefly about the management, what to be done after surgery and prior to surgery, and when the disease has spread to other organs. And I briefly touch upon the screening and genetic counseling part. Each and every case should be discussed in multidisciplinary team meeting where we included the surgical oncologist, medical oncologist, and radiation oncologist. As each case has its own way of management. It has spread to one part of the organ, or it has localized or locally advanced. And before taking to the decision, we have to consider so many factors like age of the patient, and we'll see the performance status, whether it's able to tolerate surgery or not, and its nutrition status, and other is comorbidities. Nutritional support is very highly important, as it is this cancer itself causes loss of body weight because of loss of appetite, and cancer cachexia and severe malnutrition is always associated with stomach cancer. And these patients need extensive nutritional support with the calorie intake of 30 to 40 kilocalories per kg per day, and we have to maintain the protein levels. These are very important as the patient may have any post-operative complications and increase hospital stay because of the significant loss of weight prior to surgery. And as sir suggested, the surgery is the primary modality of treatment for stomach cancer in early stages. And though with surgery, these cancers have high rates of local lesion failure with the distance recurrences. They might come back after surgery. If you do only surgery, they might come back after some time at the same place or a different part of the body. So there are different modalities, whether to succeeding the surgery or preceding the surgery. Will add up with addition of chemotherapy agents and radiation to just improve the survival outcomes. Most cancers are diagnosed locally advanced stages like stage 3 and 4 and bulky lymph nodes. These tumors may not be operable at present, and some might have already spread to blood. So we do administer chemotherapy prior to the surgery, just to reduce the tumor size and make it the surgery operable. Sometimes to get a clear margin is very difficult, and to treat the micrometastatic disease. Micrometastatic disease is basically which has spread to the different parts of the body through blood, which definitely will lead to systemic recurrences when you do surgery and we do not give chemotherapy. And giving chemotherapy prior to surgery in advanced stages will definitely improve the dysphagia and nutritional component of the patient, which help well in reducing the surgical complications. And after surgery, and when patient has come up with the histopathology report, we have to see certain factors on the report, whether really all patients need chemotherapy or not, and whom to give, when to give, and how long the patient has to be administered for adjuvant therapies, and how he need to be followed after surgery. Those patients with pathological T3, T4 mentioned on the pathology report, and those patients who have node positive disease and adequate lymph node dissection, And those early stages cancer with the stage 1B and T2 stages also. Some features like inadequate lymph node dissection and high-grade tumors, and there is lymphatic and neuroperineal invasion tumors. These patients need adjuvant chemotherapy for up to at least 6 months, which should be started within 8 weeks of the surgery. And preferably, we use doublet regimen like Capox regimen, Folfox regimen as adjuvant chemotherapy. And some patients might need extra radiation therapy apart from chemo. That's called chemoradiation. We administer chemoradiation in specific group of patients who have resector margins positive. Operatively, this is not it is very difficult to remove entire disease sometimes. So sometimes we get partially the margins may get positive. So those patients definitely need additional radiation therapy along with chemotherapy. And in some patients, it's very difficult to remove all the lymph nodes to be dissected. At least 16 lymph nodes supposed to be dissected during surgery. Because of some regions and some additions, there is any difficulty in removing inadequate number of lymph nodes, and these patients also will get help with the chemoradiation to reduce the chance of recurrence. And apart from localized disease and locally advanced disease, some patients do present with very advanced gastric cancers, which has spread to other parts of the disease and which are unresectable at any point of the time. So in these patients, we call metastatic unresectable and gastric cancers. The therapy goal is to improve the survival and reduce the symptoms and just palliate the burden of the disease. So for these patients, stage 4 metastatic gastric cancer, we use palliative chemotherapy and recent advances like targeted immunotherapy. Along with some patients might need palliative radiation to the tumor to reduce the blood loss, and palliative for gastrogynostomy to allow the passage of the food. In the first line, for the decades together, the main established standard of the therapy is doublet chemotherapy, where we commonly use 5-FU or capecitabine and oxaliplatin-based chemotherapy, which improve the survival and symptom control. And we tend to add a third drug whenever there is a chances of high burden of disease in the young patients, who need immediate control of the disease. We add third agent. Otherwise, Capox or Folfox is the standard of care for first-line chemotherapy in metastatic gastric cancer. So apart from chemotherapy, which can improve the survival only up to 1 year max on average, there are always scope to add some used to test for the biomarker assessment in all gastric cancer specimens, just to add targeted therapy and immunotherapy. Currently, there are several agents from targeted therapy point of view and immunotherapy have been approved in first line and second line, just to improve the survival on and above the survival improved by the chemotherapy. So for all the patients present with the advanced stage disease, on the biopsy specimen, we do advise HER2/neu testing, MSI status testing, and PD-L1 testing. HER2/neu testing will be done on the biopsy specimen by immunohistochemistry method, and MSI by immunohistochemistry or PCR method. PD-L1 testing is tested by the same ISC method and specific platforms like DACU or Mentana. So if you see the HER2 part of the disease, there are only chances of 20 to 30% in proximal gastric cancers and 5% of distal gastric cancers, distal part of the stomach cancers, do have chances of getting this HER2 positivity. We do these patients do get benefit with the addition of targeted therapy like trastuzumab with doublet chemotherapy. So on the specimen, when you do the histoimmunochemistry, the report you can see as ISC 1, 2, 3. So we take the positive test as ISC 3 place, and whenever there is a ISC 2 test, we reflexively do the FISH test to confirm the amplification status of the HER2. These HER2 overexpressing tumors, when we add with the chemotherapy, trastuzumab drug, this drug improves the survival at least by 4 months on average above the chemotherapy advantage. And the recently updated data is also suggest we can add pembrolizumab along with ransomab these in these HER2 positive tumors to improve the survival and the 1 year survival rate. And other testing we do run on the PAPS. This one is mismatch repair gene testing and MSI, that is microsatellite instability protein status. Whenever there are tumors which are showing MSA high positivity or defective MMR genes, immunotherapy either along with doublet chemo has been shown in the recent data has improved the survival. Though it is a subgroup analysis, and the survival rates are going beyond 2 years for especially these group of patients, which is really almost doubling of the survival when you use only chemotherapy. And some tumors might, even as you get an PD-L1 positive, we test by CPS score, that is combined proportion score. Based on this score only, we'll try to add immunotherapy along with the chemotherapy. Whenever your tumor is more than 5 CPS score, we can add limonlimab, or whenever more than 10, can use pembrolizumab as well. And even after completion of their first line chemotherapy, most of the patients do progress either on immunotherapy or targeted therapy and chemotherapy. And these patients might need second line chemotherapy. Second line chemotherapy is mainly paclitaxel. And whenever there is a progression of the disease, at the progression also, we do test for HER2 overexpression. Again, whether they have received in the upfront or not. If they have received an upfront, we do have a new drug called famotidine deruxtecan, which is based on a phase 2 study, which has shown really good results in terms of response rates and survival in these HER2 overexpressing tumors. And whosoever not received in the upfront setting, we still have the chance of receiving immunotherapy in second line, third line, beyond, whenever they have MSA status high or tumor mutation burden high or the PD-L1 scoring showing more than 10% CPS score. And if those patients who are not eligible for immunotherapy or HER2 targeted therapy, can be given the second line chemotherapy with another targeted drug like ramucirumab monotherapy, or we can add with the chemotherapy of like paclitaxel. But in the time of second line chemotherapy, we have to really assess the ECOG performance status and tolerability of the patient and the previous line of treatments he has received and patient preferences and the goal of the treatment. So after so many updates in the advanced metastatic gastric cancer, the way we are missing is the screening part. The screening so far in worldwide, it has been approved only in some countries where the prevalence of gastric cancer is really high, like Japan and Korea. And American College of Gastroenterology do suggest there are some high-risk groups. We can still apply screening to detect these cancers early so that we can improve the survival. There are no Indian specific guidelines as such, and we can still case-to-case basis, we can just suggest screening for those patients who have GERD for more than 5 years, reflux disease, and along with that, so those patients have risk factors like central obesity and who have a strong history of smoking and alcohol, and family history. And being the upper GI endoscopy is a invasive procedure, and we cannot repeat it every year. For some patients may not be show much complaints regarding the procedures for screening. So there's a new technology like can use a cytosponge. It is like an endoscopic cell collection device where we can just, it's like a pill, we can pop up it, and once you pop up the pill, you can just it will go up to the level of stomach where it will dissolute and will take the tissues from the stomach part where we can test on microscope, which can easily tested when there are any pre-malignant lesions or cancerous lesions, which can be detected on this pill test, which can definitely replace upper GI endoscopy in the future, which has a sensitivity of 80 to 90%. And patients do have someone having two gastric cancer patient, the same family, first and second degree relative. and those patients who detected the cancer at the age less than 40 years of age, and who has personal family history of gastric cancer, and along with another breast cancer of lobular histology, and one of them who diagnosed less than years of age. These three group of patients definitely need to be referred for genetic counseling and testing for the CDH1 mutation, which is very common hereditary gastric cancer mutation, which causes hereditary gastric cancers. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. And we can just take some questions if are there any.
Yes. A very good presentation, and Dr. Harish. In a nutshell, you have given the post-operative treatment protocol, and also about the genetic screening, and what are the new molecules and new drugs related with the targeted therapy and immunotherapy, and what we are using. So thank you very much. There's one question on the screen, which is saying that how much is the, it is a general question, how much is the non-veg consumption or non-vegetarian item consumption? Is it risky or does it cause cancer? Yes, definitely it is the food which is deeply fried, and also red beef or red meat. These are prone, and these have been shown that it causes more cancer related process in the body. So normally that's why the incidence is more in South India, because in South India compared to North India, people use a little more meat and also more spicy diet. So that is one of the reason for that, having the cancer. There's one more question here, which is saying, doctor, what are the common signs and symptoms of stomach cancer, or how should we diagnose it in early stage? So as already I have discussed in the previous slides, symptoms for cancer, gastric cancer, stomach cancers are unable to eat, or even if we are eating, immediate fullness of the stomach, loss of appetite, loss of weight, sometimes abdominal distension, and also hematomasis or melena. That means dark colored stool or blood in the vomiting. These are most common symptoms of stomach cancers. And those who are more of alcoholic, or smoking cigarettes, and also previous history of radiation, or there is a family history of stomach cancer in the family. So again, these are also few risk factors or causative agent for cancer. There's one more question here, which is showing, which is asking, what are the newer modalities are available to treat cancer, stomach cancer? So Dr. Harish, can you tell what are the newer modalities or drugs are available to treat cancer?
So for now, after chemotherapy, which has been the standard of care for the last 2 or 3 decades, now we have newer modalities like targeted therapy and immunotherapy. But these therapies we can prescribe to only subgroup of patients, where they can have P2 test for biomarker, like I suggested, HER2/neu testing, and MSI status testing, and PD-L1 testing. Whenever these markers come positive or in a defined range, we can offer the patients, along with chemotherapy, we'll add up these targeted drugs, so that they have improved survival and lesser side effects, and there's an immediate relief of the symptoms. Though these drugs are available to certain group of patients, again the issue with these drugs are like immuno-oncology drugs is a cost. So barring the cost, the advantage of these drugs is really like they don't have any side effects which are common with chemotherapy, and they are easy to administer, and they have can maintain the good quality of life as such.
Thank you, Dr. Harish. There's one more question. what are the common side effects or complications of chemotherapy? Because in outside society we are afraid and we hear little side effects of chemotherapy and patient becoming weak. So can you just explain what are the common side effects and what are the precautions to take while patient is on chemotherapy or targeted therapy?
Sure. So first we discuss about the chemotherapy part. The most common chemotherapy we use for VA cancers, like it's a CAPOX regimen, and that includes capecitabine and oxaliplatin and FOLFOX regimen. The main side effects of these regimens are like diarrhea. So we generally explain the patient even before starting the chemotherapy, the chances of diarrhea in the first and second cycles. So we tell them to have adequate hydration and to avoid spicy food and outside fruits. So that apart from that, we these drugs do have side effects like rashes on the palms and soles, what we call hand foot syndrome. So these are very mild. They will be more of like grade one, what you call it. So mild side effects would be there for most of the patients, and severe side effects we do see with only 10% of the patients. So there is no need to get panic with the chemotherapy. This CAPOX regimen even doesn't cause any loss of hair and not much of vomiting, and more the it's very easily easily tolerable regimen, what we call. And apart from targeted therapy, what we use here is Transumab. Transumab is a very safest drug when been administered with good cardiac function. So only side effect with the Transumab is affecting the heart. It is also reversible, and the chances is also like around 4%. If you administer for 100 patients, the chances of having cardiac dysfunction is less than 4%. So it is the safest drug one can give. And apart from that, chemotherapy has side effects, definitely yes, but these are all without with prescribed medication and dose. The typical dose what you follow for based on the patient's performance status, nutritional status, and his body habitus. The doses which we prescribe will have side effects only in 10% of the patient. And having said that, the patient from their perspective have to limit have to have good diet and high protein diet and adequate hydration.
Okay, very nicely elaborated, doctor. There's one more question here on the screen, which says, what is the role of radiation therapy in stomach cancer? Which patients do you give radiation? So, Dr. Harish, can you elaborate about it?
Sure, sir. So radiation part will comes in his patients, those patients who have got operated and have some high risk features. In one of my previous slides has shown clearly in those patients who have come up with inadequate lymph node dissection. And in the surgery, sometimes we are not able to remove all the stations, as clearly explained about the stations like D1, D2, D3. So someone having only dissection up to D1 level and someone having margin status positive. Whenever we have removed the entire disease, sometimes there is a focal positivity of the margins, what we call. So in those two conditions, we give adjuvant chemoradiation, margin positive disease and inadequate lymph node dissection disease. Apart from this, in palliative radiotherapy, some patients do present with advanced stages with hematemesis sometimes and gross melena, which requiring multiple transfusions. So chemotherapy do take some 3 to 6 week effect to take off. So in that emergency situations, we do administer palliative radiation as hemostatic, what we call, to the primary tumor.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harish. Somebody is asking question about how to follow up about the stomach cancer patient. So when we see any, let me answer it. So when we see any operated patients or given chemotherapy and radiation, patient has completed all the therapy. So sometimes patients are very happy and then don't come again. They don't come, that they think that the treatment is over and there is no need to come. But this is one very, very important message for all of us, that even though the treatment has been completed, but we have to follow these patients on regular basis. Normally we call them every 3 monthly, and we do some physical checkup. We check the abdomen and all other areas, and we do also advise some investigations like tumor markers, blood test, and sometimes CT scan or PET scan or endoscopy, depending on the patient's condition. So if everything is okay, no problem. But sometimes around 10 to 20% stomach cancers may come back, or they can recur, or they can metastasize. So depending on the metastasis or any recurrence, we have to again treat them. So this is a message for here, that any patients who have been treated for stomach cancer, as per the protocol, you have to go to the treating physician, to the doctor, and whatever schedule, as per the schedule, and whatever test they advise, we have to do it. So that is the answer for this. And I think this is around six minutes. So do we have more time, Pawan, or
So you're up with the time.
huh?
We are up with the time. We don't have much questions also. If any other questions, we can address offline.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So thank you very much, all the listeners and all the doctors, for coming up and having interactive session. So I hope the purpose of the webinar is we have fruitified. And if there is any doubts, if there are any questions, you can always contact us at yashodahospital.com or through digital media or through email. Thank you, Dr. Harish, for your wonderful insights, and thank you, Pawan, and all the digital marketing team behind this, who have made the successful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.